Thank you, Brian. I want to thank for the invitation. Having been in Gainesville for more than 25 years, when Howard Odom still was around, getting lost on the street driving his car and trying to find him and calling the police all the time. What I'm going to talk today is not much about my work as a researcher, nor my background as an Amazonian. But I wanted to start saying Amazonians are not just Indians. We are the products of multiple cultures there. And I'm one of them. I have the Indian blood, the European blood, the African blood. So it's important to know there, and perhaps try to tell our colleagues from conservation that they had to pay attention to the Indians' neighbors. Also, not just the Indians if they want to save the Amazon. What I'm going to try to do is to present a synthesis of deforestation, what is there in the literature. I was encouraged to do that because I have this sense that in Amazonia, what is field information about deforestation, about the complex issues of the process of deforestation in the Amazon that's collected by army of students, some of them from Gainesville, have become less and less influential in decision-making in these countries, in the Amazonian countries, being gradually replaced by high-tech, remote sensing, GIS, and comfortably sitting in a Starbucks. So let's try to reflect on that and to see if we can actually use field information and to see how we can influence governments, policymakers, and conservationists using what is really reality, not just try to replace by high-techs. The second thing I wanted to tell you is that I want to apologize to the experts on deforestation, particular to Phil Fernside. If you could stand, please. That have enormous influence going to Manaus in the 80s and reading the newspaper with a title that Americano film size, Incha Saco de Boto Tucuxi. So all of this time, you know, bothering governments, bothering people, bothering companies that are driving the deforestation in the Amazon. There he is, Phil, surviving all of these difficult times and still having a lot to say to us. My apologies for going into your kingdom, deforestation. As I said, it's very hard, it's very difficult to capture all the visions, actors, and realities in deforestation. The volume of information is enormous. There's an average of 18 papers that deforestation that is published per week, just in the English language. I don't want to count the French because I don't think we read French anymore. But that makes it difficult, but also important to start thinking about synthesis of information, the volume of information produced by technology, by scientists, by groups. I remember in China, in Beijing, each one of my colleagues in the Beijing University and the Minsun University are linked to these companies who help them to write papers. There's somebody in Oklahoma writing a paper for a Chinese scholar in Beijing. So this is reality that we have to start facing. I'm going to try to talk about these issues of deforestation, more focused in the science aspect, in what science tells us. How do change? So as I said, there are multiple views. There are a lot of information there. And one of the things that comes in the last, I would say in the last 2 years, is this idea of teleconnections. Understanding how the different drivers, different actors are interlinked, how decisions are made. There are many papers that have been produced and looking more at the complexity of the drivers of deforestation, how the actors are acting, are linked in the Amazon. Oh, sorry, I don't know how to use it. But let me focus in these 4 points. One is advances to understand the drivers, actors, and context of deforestation. Again, in the context comes the idea of there is no one deforestation or 2 deforestations. There are many different kinds of deforestation that we need to understand in the context that's happening. The other one is the emerging drivers, urbanization, globalized economy. I want to talk more about bring the issues of urbanization. We already, Besito already talked about this corporate deforestation, and let's see, bring the factor of urbanization and globalization. Does intensification reduce deforestation? I'm talking about that because there is this idea exclusionary, here conservation, their development or their plantations. This idea of intensification in land use in the Amazon, particularly for the production of global commodities. Let me talk a bit about that. I'm going to end with these 3 main questions that you might be able to answer and telling me. I'm bringing more questions than answers to you. This is just an idea how Rudel thinks about deforestation, has his vision about deforestation, how now the augment of consumer demand is getting the expansion of market to a global scale. Smallholders are partners. They are not upside to this demand. Cattle ranchers, plantation owners, all of them lead to the deforestation. There are complex causes complex decisions. I would like to expand more about what the theories of decision tell us about deforestation, the interlinks, the interdependence, the co-benefits, the trade-offs. I will do another session if you invite me again here and pay my trip. I want to talk about large event, deforestation process, the large event deforestations, which is more common, I guess everybody knows through the news or through papers that you read in school or you read while you are teaching. Also, I wanted to talk about incremental deforestation, particularly the expansion of small cities in the Amazon. You probably know the demographic shift in the Amazon is not too much in the cities, are in small towns. And these small towns are growing. Let's think about what's going to happen until they consolidate the economic and the population growth. And the consequences, fires, floods, biodiversity loss, socio-environmental vulnerability to climate. It is a large topics that I'll again, my pardon for trying to cover all of these topics. This is perhaps one of the early ways of trying to look at deforestation using transition theories, and a lot of the work we talk more on deforestation is the idea of no replacement of the forests, and there is not too much into changing the curve of deforestation. Though in the Amazon, if you look at INPE information, you're going to find many areas of regrowth, but the regrowth, the afforestation process is very hardly discussed because it doesn't give you money. Deforestation does. So that's perhaps one I bring all this again, these transition theories in a way how we can understand that deforestation is not the only process. In the Amazon, you can have hotspots of deforestation, yes, but you also can have hotspots of afforestation in the Amazon. Bringing some of this, my colleague Ruth Desiswada, this whole idea of proportional landscapes, how wetlands, and a little bit present or try to picture the whole process of deforestation as land occupation. There are a lot of course, again, back to the technology, a lot of information on satellite data, spatial information, technology and spatial information now is available. Used to be in the hands of the army, used to be secret information, but now it's available. That create explosion of resources, technological resources, visual information that we all love to spend time in the computer while sipping coffee. But there is information actually helps governments. We had to recognize each one of the Amazonian countries have their own source of information or institution capacity now in process of building that you can go there and estimate the rates of deforestation. Of course, there are a lot of controversial. Phil Fernside will never agree with the INPI data, and the INPI data will never agree, but at least it's not just Phil, it's also INPI. So in this case, the accuracy is still an issue, but the information is there. You are the right person or the wrong person to argue with them, but we can argue about the rates of deforestation. That's in case of Brazil. Case of Colombia, for instance, they're still not being reported because of national security. The annual rates of deforestation are not there. You have decadal information still in the process of broadcasting or forecasting rates of deforestation annually, monthly, like in Brazil now in Peru does. In Peru, open access. Peru is perhaps has one of the most advanced GIS information. They have wonderful systems, but the problem in Peru is there are 3 contested resources. It's more than 2 years that they still don't agree. So the Minister of the Environment is still trying to decide if he follows the data collected or provided by Greg Asner, the Maryland University, and other institutions. So creates those kind of things, and we might think it's a very easy decision. The minister can decide with who to go, but the quality of information, the baseline, the whole modeling for monitoring deforestation in Peru is one of the most accurate that we have until now, better than the INPE. So Brazilians, you are not the only one who are advancing in that. Let me go to emerging urbanization. As you know, the global population is becoming more urban. And this is the data from the population, United Nations population center, where you can see the urban population is going up. It will keep going up based on the projections. Something happened in 2007 where you have this cross of the lines between urban and rural population. So this forest cover is in some way relating to urban growth, which leads to agriculture trade. As I said, everybody participates in the demand of food, the small, the medium, and the large. And all of us are part of this demand. You can see the relationship in how forest losses and annual urban population growth in 2000 and the net agriculture trade per capita at the same period. This is a publication by Ruth de Vries, my colleague from Columbia University. So let me go to this question of intensification, if this contributes or not. This is what you probably know about the success story of Brazil, how the rates for the legal Amazon in Brazil have declined. Again, I had to spend time with Phil to discuss if this is true or not, but it's more the common. People believe, and INPE presents all this data, that this is a success story, that Amazonia is, in terms of the whole territory, is declining deforestation. But if you think about Brazilian Amazonia bigger than Florida, you might have places that are still facing deforestation, hotspots of deforestation, bigger than Florida in this, what we call decline of deforestation landscapes. You can see also, perhaps the soybeans is one example of intensification of commodity production in Brazil. You can see the soybeans and cattle production have declined in Mato Grosso, have increases, while deforestation have decreases. This is something that we had to acknowledge, why this is happening, and it's market crash. Some of the production of cattle, particularly the Argentinians competing with the Brazilians, are in some ways not allowing cattle ranches to expand. Improve monitoring systems. There are technology now that you can monitor deforestation. Improve enforcement, high-profile policies, and soy moratorium. So there are many other factors that I want, local factors that are allowing this kind of success story. The intensification leads to declining of deforestation in the Mato Grosso context. The actual example of Peruvian Amazon is not too much. This is my picture because I was trying to eat the oil palm and with an enormous consequence in my stomach. The oil palm in Peru is an example of the global market, global commodity. Oil palm is increasing in Peru in relation as well as in the global demand for oil palm. You can see these two curves. The red one is the new area. Well, it's not too new now, the Pucallpa or the Ucayali region, and the blue one is where oil palm has been there for more than 3 decades in San Martin. But you see how it's increasing. But the expansion of oil palm, this intensification of the production of commodity in the Ucayali doesn't give you the same success story as in Mato Grosso. A lot of the production it's being done, as you can see down, the smallholder production of oil palm is done in degraded lands, deforested land, while the high yield or corporate production is done in the forests. So it explains the reason why a lot of these degraded lands that is being promoted by governments in Peru, or even groups like FAO trying to promote, these are highly contested area. Degraded lands means not empty lands, has some owner. And in case of Peru, the owners goes from the small indigenous people to the ex-president Fujimori and Alan Garcia. So ownership of the land, or this degraded land, is a very complex issue. Corporate oil palm planters from Malaysia or from Singapore don't want to deal with that. They get the land, they get the forest, and they expand their plantation in the forest. That's what you see in the satellite images now in Pucallpa, in the Awaitia region, and the Tabichaco region in Loreto. Again, high yield. The argument that the high yield varieties, oil palm, will reduce deforestation. It's not the case in Peru. High yield increases the capacity or the attracts investors rather than reduce you want to produce more the high yield. It's an investment opportunity for them. Not necessary is for settling or consolidating the land in what they are producing. So high yield varieties in this process of intensification leads you also to a process of deforestation in Peru in relation to oil palm. It's perhaps also the land sparing, and I think in this session we're talking about land sparing, land sharing. We're going to talk about how in relation, this is just to illustrate how the Asian market is in volume of demand of resources, global resources, enormously, and I don't see how Amazonian countries will satisfy billions of hungry Chinese, billions of hungry Indians eating. And perhaps that's one of the big challenging for Amazonian countries is how to say no, how to monitor, how to really try to control this appetite for land and product production in the Amazon. Globally connected markets can reduce deforestation, increase agricultural production, but not always, as you see. It's not, we cannot perceive this as a black and white issue. It's a complex issue. They create biodiversity fragmentation. In the process of biodiversity fragmentation with enormous impact on evolution, it's being increasing in Peru. Peru perhaps is one of the examples. Protected areas will become not just protected areas, might be cemeteries of biodiversity if this process of fragmentation increases in the area. And reduces disruption in the local hydroclimatic regimes, and there are more and more cases of scarcity of water in towns and cities in the Amazon, not just in Peru, it's also in Ecuador, also in Bolivia and Colombia. So this is part of this work on what's the effect of deforestation on hydrological regime is what we have to start thinking about how we can include in our research agenda. Increased profit and incentive for further expansion. Land is money, and decisions are made not in the local, but then decisions are probably made in Singapore or in Hong Kong or in New Delhi. That's important to know how decisions are made there for this land. Displaced low productive agriculture further into frontier. This is perhaps one of the processes that's the reason I'm saying smallholders are not outside of the equation, are part of the equation of deforestation, and in this increased demand for commodities. Only spare land or incentives in place to deter deforestation. Rudel shows that that's not the case. You might spare land, but you not spare forests. Forests still not part of this policy of controlling expansion agriculture. Three main questions I want to leave you this, and perhaps you can give the answer. One is, what is the role of urbanization in mitigating the impact of deforestation? Mitigation is perhaps one of the things that many governments in the Amazon have to take seriously. We need to mitigate, we need to adapt now, not tomorrow. And deforestation is causing the problems now, not in the future. What is the interplay between climate variability and deforestation? How much of climate variability, how much of deforestation exposes you to this kind of risk, climate risk? How the rising demand for green beef, soybeans, palm oil are affecting deforestation and afforestation processes is a question that we always talk about how the hamburger connections or the soy connections affect us. It's not new, it's more than 10 years. It's time to evaluate this green beef, what is the effect in deforestation, and perhaps I invite you to think seriously and use the young minds to collect information, and perhaps we can have answer from them. Thank you.